I just hear the noon whistle today in Fort Atkinson, so that's our time to say welcome to all of you that have tuned in so far. We're always glad to have you with us for for the live portion, so to speak, of our Hoard's Dairyman webinar series. Today, we're very happy to have Victor Cabrera from the University of Wisconsin here talking about new dairy software tools, and they're free. That's going to be very interesting. We're looking forward to that. We also want to thank Lallemand Animal Nutrition for their sponsorship of today's webinars. I should introduce myself. I'm Steve Larson, one of the members of the editorial staff here at the magazine. I sometimes forget to do that, and I apologize for that. And we also want to welcome and thank Mike Hutchins, our co-host down at the University of Illinois, and his sidekick, Jim Boltz, who is the man behind the Wizard of Oz screen down there, who keeps all the everything on track for us and fixes problems that develop, and hopefully they're few. So Mike, with those few words, I'll turn it over to you to introduce our presenter today and get our webinar rolling.
Well, very good, Steve, and we want to welcome all our listeners, and they just keep joining us. We're welcome to our February webinar, and we're very excited to have Victor Cabrera with us today. Victor is an assistant professor and extension dairy specialist in the Department of Dairy Science at the University of Wisconsin, and Victor is leading a very important team of workers over there with decision support tools, and you're going to see a couple of those today. And I had a chance to share a podium with Victor just a couple months ago at a PDPW meeting, and it went very, very well. Prior to joining the Wisconsin staff, he also worked at New Mexico State University for a period of time, and with that background, he's moved into this whole area of scientific tools to improve dairy farming profitability and environment. So, Dr. Cabrera, without taking any more of your very precious time, we welcome you to our February dairy webinar by Hoard's Dairyman and Lallemand. We thank you much for our sponsorship, and with that, the program is yours, Victor.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate the opportunity to share these tools with all these wonderful audience out there, and also having this webinar recorded so people can look at any further later time. Well, before I start quickly, thank you very much to Hoard's Dairyman for making this possible, to you, Mike, for such a nice introduction, and for inviting me to this session, and also to Jim Boltz, who actually was very helpful to put all this together. So let's go directly to the presentation. I'm gonna share with you three tools. I selected three tools, but you will find on the website much more tools out there. So I'm gonna give you a taste of what is there in the UW Dairy Management website. So it is very simple to get it there. It is dairymgt.info. If you Google it, you will find it very easily, very quickly. And there would be a section, that's the one I want to feature today, which is the tools. And within that section, you will find, to date, about 40 or a little more than 40 decision support tools. And you will find there different sections like feeding and nutrition, or reproduction, or replacement. And what you're going to see today is only a sample of that. But before I go further and give you specifically those tools, I want to just make for all the attendees, have a poll question out there. And the question is very simple. Have you ever visited the UW Dairy Management website? And you have your selection there from A to E, from never, that may happen, but hopefully not much more in the future, up to E, which is yes, of course, I visit this website frequently. And actually, that's what I would like to see, people taking advantage of these tools that we try to do our best on building them.
Well, Victor, we're off and running here, and we got almost 60% voted
they
here.
jumped right in on that voting, Victor. The results are coming in quite rapidly, and we're
we
up
don't
to
wait. The
65.
Republicans have to go quickly because we only give them about 50 seconds to do it. So we got 2/3 in. Let's go ahead and close the gym and show Victor the results, or does he see them already? So,
Oh, great.
Victor,
Well,
you comment on this.
glad to see that there is at least 33, like 45%. I don't know if everyone else is seeing the results. Probably right?
Yes, I
Yeah,
see.
they also, yep, they see them.
So I can add to 46% of people who have seen a few times, many times, or frequently, and I can see 38% who never saw it. So I'm glad to have this opportunity, and I can expect that in the near future there is going to be much more hits on this website and people taking advantage of the information. So let's go now directly to the tools, but this is just as a brief introduction that the main core or thinking behind the development of all these tools is the fact that every farm is different. Okay, whether they are all in Wisconsin, Illinois, or anywhere in the U.S. or anywhere in the world, there will always be very critical differences among farms, and the bottom line is that we strive to do this decision making based on the conditions of those dairy farm systems. The other important point here is that market conditions change permanently, and more seems to be more than ever nowadays. We have such a volatile feed prices, milk prices, so there is always the need to reassess the decision making, and the best way we think is using some of these tools like user-friendly applications that should be, and I think this is important, easy to use, user-friendly, but still, and this is very important as well, robust and very solid in their calculations. So that's basically what I want to show you today here, and basically that's what I follow in any of the tools you will see on the web page. Okay, so today we're going to discuss reproduction side, and we're going to feature this tool that's called UW-DairyRepro Plus. We're going to talk then, switch gears towards nutrition, and we're going to talk about FeedVal, and then we're going to move at the end over replacement, and we're going to talk about this new tool of the economic value of a dairy cow. So let's start with the UW-DairyRepro Plus. So what it does, assess the economic value of reproductive management programs. So basically, bottom line, will give you producers, advisors, allied industry, or any practitioner in the field the best reproductive program for specific farm conditions. So basically what we're trying to do with this tool is balance what the costs are of a reproductive program, and for example, costs would be the semen, labor, hormones if used in the reproductive program. We can also assess the cost of culling, more or less depending on the reproductive program, and in the other side, the benefits that will give us the reproductive program could be summarized in milk and calves, for example. And what we want to see is basically something like this, that the weight of the milk and calves will be much higher than the costs. So we are better off with the reproductive program we are managing. So that at the end, of course, will result in additional profit for the farm. But if we see this a little more in detail, we can do this assessment by using this nice graph you're going to see here. You see on the x-axis, we're going to see the lactation movement, the days open or days after calving. And on the y-axis right now, you're going to see the percent of pregnant, actually the cumulative percent of pregnant cows. And you can see this curve, and I would think many of the people would be familiar with this kind of curve. So many people will call this the survival reproductive curve. And basically what it's showing is how cows are getting pregnant throughout the lactation, okay? And that will, of course, respond to the management of a reproductive program. For example, in this case, at 346 days, as you see at the end, there would be about 6% of cows that didn't get pregnant and will likely be culled, replaced because of reproductive failure. But the other part and important on this assessment is the net return that you are seeing on the y-axis on the right. And we're going to see now bars that indicate what you would expect as a net return in dollars per cow per day, depending on when the cows are getting pregnant throughout the lactation. And one thing you can see very clearly here is that as the lactation progresses, the net return on dollars per cow per day normally will decrease sharply. So that means, for example, if we go here at the 72 days, we can see, for example, that at that point in time, if this was, for example, a time AI program, there were about, let's say, 32% of cows pregnant. And for each one of those 32%, we calculate that they will have about $7.20 per cow per day during that lactation as profitability, okay? However, for example, if we have cows getting pregnant at 178 days, for example here, which would be the difference of this value in percentage less this value in percentage in the previous period, that percentage of cows will only have, in this case, for example, $6.8 or $6.7 per cow per day, which makes a huge difference in the profitability depending on when the cows get pregnant. If we see this in a little more detail, and here we have again this nice survival curve of cows getting pregnant across the lactation, we can actually multiply the percentage of cows getting pregnant in any point by their value. And actually what we're going to see is something like you are seeing in the curve. In any event, in any reproductive event, we can actually have a dollar value. And if we add all those values, plus there would be still a percentage of cows that didn't get pregnant at the end, but those also contributed somehow to the profitability of the farm. So if we put all this together, for example, in this case, we can assess that this reproductive program would bring to the farm $6.95 per cow per day. So this responds to one reproductive program. Then now we can do the assessment, what happened if we change this reproductive program, if we add an additional heat detection innovation, or if we are trying a new management technique, how much more we would expect or how much less we could expect. And that way we can do a very nice and very systematic assessment. And based on those principles, we built this UW-DairyReproPlus Plus, which looks like this. You have on one side, on the left here, in yellow, all those data that you will need to complete in order to use in a good systematic way the assessment of this tool. On the right side, you're going to see the results, including the survival curves and the important part of the economics that you would expect with one program and with the alternative program. So we're going to see that more into detail. For example, here you can customize your farm by indicating the number of cows by different parities. You can indicate the average body weight of those parities, involuntary culling, mortality, stillbirth. You should define the economics, which should be very straightforward. Farmers should be able to have that information readily available. And the important part here we like to emphasize is the lactation curves. You are able and you have the opportunity to define your own farm lactation curves here for different lactations, 1, 2, and 3, and higher. Each one of these tests could be understood as months in milk after calving. So the tool will give you a graph like this that will represent pretty much your lactation curves, and based on that we can do a much better assessment of the reproductive performance and the economics on your own farm. Important part as well in this tool, and very unique that you will not be able to find out in other tools is the fact that this tool will allow you to define in great, and believe me, in great detail, your reproductive programs on the farm and assess the alternative potential changes you could do. For example, here you define always a current and alternative program. For example, in this case, this farmer is doing off-sync for first service postpartum and off-sync for second and later services. If you would click here, you would have a long list of about 15 or 20 different preset reproductive programs. The other thing that this current program is doing is starting the resynchronizations before a preg check, which in the reproductive program will mean a save in time, probably 1 week ahead of time to start the next resynchronizations. Okay, but this will work as well as the alternative together with the data we define later on, like for example the reproductive parameters here, where we always have a current and alternative. It's saying, for example, here voluntary waiting period, which would be different or could be different in the current and alternative. But the important part would be to define the days in milk the first time II, interbreeding interval, heat bred before and after. Just take these numbers as an example. I'm not defining any specific reproductive program. The bottom line and the point I want to make here is that basically combining these menus on top here, these numbers here, and also the numbers that we have on the right here, you should be able, and actually believe me, we have worked this in Wisconsin and in many other parts in the US and across the world, and we have been able always to define very close to what actually is happening in reality reproductive programs, and based on that do some tweaks and see the economic impact would have different management scenarios based on a current one. So you would have also the opportunity to define additional information like heat detection labor, pregnancy diagnosis, labor for injections and also pregnancy diagnosis, hormones if they are used, and activity monitors. Actually, the activity monitors is a new addition to this tool that has been updated like 6 months ago or something like that. And basically, because of the popularity of these monitors, at least in Wisconsin, and I believe all over the US, and I know they have been used heavily in Europe as well, for example, here the idea is to make an assessment if it would be worthwhile to actually buy and install a heat detection activity monitor system and compare with what the farm currently has. And actually that has been heavily used for many farmers and companies who were trying to assess that kind of impact on the reproductive performance. Okay, once you enter all that data, you would be able to actually find out what's the reproductive performance that responds to those parameters. And here you will always see a current, and here is in blue, an alternative in red, on the difference of the reproductive performance. And luckily, or hopefully, you would have an idea of this, and many software already in farms would be able to give you something similar to this. What is unique and different is that actually here, we will give you additionally what is the improvement in the reproductive performance. Like, for example, if we measure the 21-day pregnancy rate, we can see in this case, for example, in this example, that we will gain 6 percentage points by changing from the current to the alternative program, whatever was the difference between those two definitions, okay? We can see the same for 21-day service rate, the conception rate, how much less we would expect in days open, and the projected calving in interval. But all these will be translated to economic performance. And this is something we're gonna see at the end of the results, which is gonna be the difference of the current against the alternative in dollars per cow per day. Every cent here makes a difference. Here, for example, you see that with the alternative, you would expect about 13 cents more per cow per day. If we multiply that for the days during a year and by the number of cows in a herd, let's say 1,000 cows in a herd, that could make a pretty substantial amount in difference. And you have to take into consideration that here we are including all the costs and also all the benefits. So this is net gain that you would have one program against another reproductive program. Okay? So now a little time to slow down a little bit and give you the opportunity to actually have a poll question about what do you think is the most important economic factor for having cows pregnant at the right time. And you have 5 options there. Please pick the one you think it's the most important, and we can discuss briefly those results.
Very good, Victor. We're off and running. A little slower here. This must be a tougher question, I'll tell you. That, or we got more Republicans online.
It must be. People are thinking this one over. It would take a little thought on my part too, Mike. But here they're starting to come in here now.
I know which one. I got my pick, but
you got your favorite?
I got my favorite pick at this point, but we'll see. I will cough if I win. Victor, do you have a favorite one here, Victor, as well?
Well, yeah, I have one, but I don't want to tell yet.
Okay.
I
tell you, we're going to close these polls here, right? As soon as we get to, we're at 66% right now. We're going to close them, and let's show Victor where the answer is. And here it is.
The answer is, I mean, I was expecting something like this, that 25%, a quarter of the people would think that reproduction costs are the most important. And I can tell you, for the experience we have had, reproduction costs are very important, but by far they are not the most important, because we always need to think about reproduction from a benefit and cost point of view. And many times we are kind of biased to see only the costs, which are important, but the benefits we would have from having the cows pregnant at the right time would be much more important. And actually, I would agree with most of the people have said there that milk would be the most important factor on doing this reproductive, very good reproductive management, and would have the most value to getting the cows pregnant at the right time. Okay, thanks. Let's move on then. And I just briefly acknowledgement support for this work from the College of Agriculture and Life Science, UW-Madison. And let's move on in the interest of time, and let's change gears to FeedVal. Okay, and FeedVal is a tool like you're gonna see in a moment, but what it does is estimate the true value of dairy feed ingredients. So basically, if you wanna, in a nutshell, it will help practitioners find the best dairy feeds to buy, and therefore save lots of money in feed costs. As we all know, probably is the most important cost in any dairy farm system. So what it does, it estimates feed prices based in the feed ingredients and based on the nutrients that are contained in these feeds. And we always have this concept of referee feeds, which are the ones that are kind of form the price according to their market price. So the other thing that FeedVal will give you is a compared price compared to the market price. So it's gonna tell you really if a buy is good or bad in any point in time. It will, at the end, guarantee you a best price for the feed you would like to purchase. Okay? So the way I want to go at this time is show you actually the tool here. And I'm going to discuss briefly what it is in there, and we're going to go step by step, seeing the way or the suggested way I will have for you to use this tool. And you will kind of see it's very simple. First of all, in the top of the tool, you're going to have all the commands, okay? And we're going to see those later on. Then what you're going to see here is type of a table, which the important thing is an online tool. So you don't need to install any software or download any spreadsheet or anything like that. Here, you would be ready to go once you log in on a web page using any browser. Even you can do this in a tablet or a smartphone, it will work just fine. Okay? And then what you're going to see in this table is 3 blocks. In the first block here, and on the top of the first block, you would have the nutrients that you can define. We're going to see that in a moment. And in this case, for example, we have 6 nutrients: RUP, RDP, NEL, energy, lipid, physical effective NDF, and calcium. Okay? And then on the rows, we're going to have the ingredients. And we're going to define those ingredients later on as well. But we can have a long list here, as many as close to 50 different ingredients, which ones we want to work with. And therefore, in this part of the block or this table, you will have the nutrient content of feed ingredients. That you will have default values there that comes from NRC values, but also the user has all the ability to edit and change those values there. In this part of the tool, on the center block, you would have the opportunity to define the feed prices, which are the market prices. And finally, on the right part here, you will have the results, which will be shown to you as predicted values, and the actual price as percentage of the predicted value. Results also can be seen, depending on the level of usage you would like. On this part, I'm pointing here as the nutrient value for each one of the nutrients we are working at any point in time. So let's see this tool more in detail here, okay? And some suggested steps to use the tool. First of all, select if to use negative nutrient values, okay? There has been quite some feedback, and we really appreciate the people who have used early on in this tool. And when you work with this, you will realize that sometimes when you are doing these solutions, you will find some of the nutrients which are being here shown in the results, the nutrient values will come or could come as negative values. Okay, so in order to avoid any confusion, we put this option. If any user doesn't want to see those negative nutrient calculated values, you can just simply leave this as check as it is right now, and then automatically the tool is gonna avoid or drop those columns where the nutrients could come as negative. In my opinion, and the way I like to use is including the negative nutrient values, okay? Because the formation of the price for each one of the referee feeds, it's a combination of using different proportion of different nutrients and the solution of different ingredients with their nutrient content at one point in time. So from the mathematical point of view, what we are trying to do is try to explain the market price, for example, of corn based on the nutrient content that the corn has, but also taking into consideration all the other referee feeds that are being used at one point in time. Okay, so this may be the part a little more difficult to understand from this tool, and just want to get over at the very beginning. Once we go over this, the rest would be very simple and very straightforward. The next thing we suggest to do is select the number of nutrients you want to use in any calculation or any assessment. And actually, we have worked for you in order to make this very simple. You can select as low as 2 nutrients. For example, I would use, if I do, and sometimes I do, for example, protein and energy as the nutrients to evaluate feed prices or feed values. But if you would like, you can use as much as 13 different nutrients. Okay? Once you select the number of nutrients, which will appear here in the columns, actually for each one of those, you will still be able, you will have the opportunity to select the combination, the best combination you will like. For example, you can select RUP here, in the next one RDP, and you can combine with lipid, physical effective NDF, or the way you would like to have the 6, 10, 13, the number of nutrients you would like to see the tool work with. Next step, select the ingredients. And in this case, one way that I thought it will help in the understanding of this point is referee feeds. One way to think about these ingredients being selected, which would be the ones that have a check, are those ones that are participating in the simultaneous solution to find out the prices of the values of the nutrients and therefore the prices of the feeds. Okay, so here the user has the opportunity to select as many as all the ingredients or as few as 2 ingredients, for example, to be the ones responsible to price all the rest of the feeds. Okay? Next point, point number 5, edit ingredients and their nutrient composition. Here you have the opportunity to change any and all the names to the names you would like. And that makes very nice because it would be very universal. It can be used anywhere. You don't need to stick to the names that appear there. And we do know that in different places of the US, different places of the world, use very different ingredients. So you can put the name right directly there and write the name of the ingredient you want to evaluate. And then the next thing that you can do is basically define the nutrient content depending on the nutrients you have selected previously for each one of those ingredients. So we are very close now. The next thing is define the prices of those ingredients that you have selected. Mostly, and the important one would be the prices for those referee feeds that you selected previously. Okay, in order to help you, what we are doing every month since a few months is to actually collect the best data we have around the Midwest. We actually use Missouri data that has a very nice data set in the web page, in their web page, with byproducts prices. And we also use feedstuffs.com to collect some additional prices, and based on that we update the prices every month. So you would have some default prices, but you are always welcome to change those prices. Along with the prices, of course, you need to define the dry matter, because these prices would be defined on an as-fed basis, and you can select different units for different feed ingredients actually, which is very nice and very convenient. Then once you do that, which should take a minute or 2 at the most, you would be able to just hit this button here which says analyze and have the results instantaneously. For example, in this case we are using 6 ingredients, 6 nutrients, as you can see there: RUP, RDP, NEL, lipid, physical effective NDF, and calcium, and you can see the nutrient values that came out as part of the result. One thing I want to point you out is that the negative value of calcium. It means that for every unit of calcium that the feed has, we are having a negative value. But as I said before, it doesn't mean that anything by itself. It needs to be seen in context with the other nutrients that the feed would have. For example, RUP, RDP, NEL. Probably if we drop this calcium out of the equation, the values of these others will also change accordingly. Okay, and based on that, actually this analysis was done for January 2013 prices from Midwest, let's say, all referee feeds. So we use all the feeds to do the formation of the price, and based on that, for example, we came out with the price of distillers dry grains of $355 per ton. Okay, and each relative price was 75%. So based on that, basically you can see right away that this would be a bargain feed to buy, because it means that $355 for this is 25% above the market price. So the predicted price is 25% above the market price, and if you have the opportunity to buy it, you should buy it because it's a good purchase at that point in time. How about cottonseed meal here? For example, the price that was calculated was $279, and this is 102% as a relative price, and we would say this is a okay feed. It is very close to the predicted price, okay, on the market price. How about barley? Let's see some extremes here. The calculated price for barley based on the nutrient composition of the barley was $11 per hundredweight. And that meant in the calculation 135%, and that 135% means that it's heavily overpriced. It means that its predicted price was 35% lower than the market price. So if it would me, I would not buy barley at this point in time because it is heavily overpriced. Okay. So based on this, we can do very nice applications, and these are only some examples. There are many more coming out, and I'm very glad people are using this. This tool has had and is having a lot of attention, actually. One of the uses, for example, we are doing is monthly market watch, and we are trying to find out every month the best feed ingredient prices in a ranked way. I'm going to show you an example very quickly. Pricing drought stress corn silage, assessment of the nutrient content according to the nutrient content. I'm going to show you as well an example of this. And finally, pricing treated alfalfa with some kind of fungicide. Let's do to the monthly price market watch perform using the FeedVal. And we did this by using all the 38 feeds that are like default in the tool, and all of them were considered to be referee feeds. We use general wholesale Midwest prices for January 2013, and for nutrients, RUP, RDP, NEL, and PENDF. And you can see here, for example, in the ranking that we had, well, first of all, none of the nutrients had a negative coefficient. And then we can see here the ranking. We had very nice bargain feeds. It's like, for example, the wet distillers here was 65% of its market price. So yeah, a very good purchase would be. But a very expensive purchase, for example, would be the heated soybean, that in this case was 35% above the predicted price. Okay, so this is a nice tool that is also, there is a link in the same tool to find out the previously months. We have done a few months already with the market watch that you can see as a reference. You can do the same analysis on your own. Pricing drought stress corn silage. Okay, this is a very nice application as well, in which actually I didn't do this analysis. People from UW Extension used the tool, and actually they came out with this protocol to price the corn silage at the time we were having this very bad drought in July last year. Okay, so what they did, basically they used these three referee feeds: the corn, soybean meal 48%, and the actual drought stress corn silage. So for each one of those, they had the nutrient content. And actually one interesting thing they did is they created one new nutrient here, which was the total digestible nutrients, okay, which is not part of the list. But actually what they did is they just pretended any of those would be TDN. And actually based on the numbers here, you can define. What I'm saying, basically, if you don't have a nutrient in the list that you would like to use, you can still do it. You can pretend any of those would be a new nutrient, and you will define those based on the numbers you put and the relationship between those numbers according to the nutrients that are being used, the ingredients are being used in a calculation. And based on that, actually they put the prices, market prices for corn and soybean meal. But for the case of the drought corn silage, they actually use the value of the fertilizers they use for it. And based on that, they came out with very nice tables, which is now part of a collection of UW extension paper, which is available to lots of people in Wisconsin, and has been used actually heavily at that part of the year to have a fair price for the drought stress corn silage. Okay, and another demonstration here, another use of the FeedVal is to price fungicide treated alfalfa. In this case, a group of county extension agents actually did a trial in the field to try the headline fungicide, and using this directly on untreated alfalfa, or alfalfa which was already insecticide treated. Okay, and so they decided to use these 5 ingredients as referee feeds, corn, soybean meal, good and bad and poor quality hay, and the corn silage with their market prices. And based on that, with 2 nutrients, only protein and energy, and based on that, actually, they came out what they thought a very fair price for the headline treated alfalfa. For example, in this case, about $3 or $4 above the untreated, and in this case, when the insecticide as well was used, also about $4 above the untreated treatment. So that actually was very interesting, because what they are doing right now is showing not only the increase in yield that they had when they treated, but the increase in quality of the alfalfa, and if really that paid, and they found that it paid to use the headline as a fungicide in order to have a better quality and higher quantity of as well of alfalfa. Okay, so those are only some tastes of how to use, but you would be able to use in many other ways as we have seen. And now we are time for another very quick poll question. What is the most important use you would give to this FeedVal decision support tool? And you have your options out there, and please cast your vote, and we're gonna discuss this very briefly.
Victor, very good. We're doing well. We're getting a little faster voting here at this point. We're up to about 30%.
I have my favorite, but I'll keep it to myself here. But we'll.
I
see
won
how
that
it
last one.
shapes
I had the most popular one. The last one, Steve. Did you win on
Did
the
you?
last one?
up. Well, I was close.
Okay,
Putting me on the spot here.
I got mine figured out here as well, and we're up to well, a little slower here.
This was just true and false. It'd be a lot easier.
Yeah, these are all good. The good news is they're all good answers. I don't think there's a bad one up here, but
yeah, right. Everyone's a noble cause. So
well, we're at about 54%. Obviously, the Republicans and Democrats aren't voting here, Victor. So we're going to close her off.
Okay, that's good.
Here we go. Let's see what we got,
right.
and we're going to show it.
Right.
Okay, great. We have the results. Okay, and I would agree with the majority there. I would use this mostly to use best fit buys, but I can see and I can understand there would be many more users, and actually in second place there finding true fit values. Actually, that's a very valuable use of this tool as well, and of course doing the formulation and trying to find out the best ingredients. Whether we have or not those ingredients in the bunker, it would make a much more cost-effective diet if we use the best value feeds. Great. Thanks for your answers. Let's move on then.
We got about 10 minutes left here.
Great. I'm going to go fast, just some acknowledgement about the support for this kind of work. And let's move on to the last tool here, economic value of a dairy cow. What it does, basically give you the value of a cow, and that has and spins very important decision making at the dairy farm management level. Okay, so what's the cow value? Very simple and very fast. Okay, my understanding and the best way I like to think about this is the future net return of a cow. I have a cow today. I want to see how much money this cow will make me from now to the future, and I want to compare that with a potential replacement. So the decision would be whether I keep or I replace a cow. If this discounted future net return is less than the replacement, I'm better off maybe replacing this cow. Okay, so that's the bottom line, but that will help to make many other decisions, as you're gonna see. Actually, if we pay attention for just a moment to this figure, this will give you the nice idea what we are doing here in this tool. That would be very simple, as simple or even simpler to use than the previous ones. We will have a cow in red, and I selected a specific cow that's in third lactation, 5 months in milk, and 1 month pregnant. And we're gonna have in green a replacement. And in this graph, what we're gonna see is months in the future in the x-axis, and we're gonna see on the y-axis the net return. So it includes all the potential revenues and all the potential costs month by month for the cow and also for the replacement. And if we see now the curve that's coming in, is what we expect from the cow. Remember, this is third lactation, 5 months in milk, 1 month pregnant, and you can see how the net return month by month is changing from this cow. It fluctuates, it bounces down and up, and it keeps changing. But you can see here later in the future, it will get very, very stable, okay? And that's because at the very beginning, the function of this net return is a function, a great function of the cow that is currently there. But we all know that the cow will always have probabilities or risk of being replaced naturally for any other reason or even die. And then over time, the cow is a function more of a replacement than the same cow. So in the future here, when it gets stable, it's a function of the replacements and then replacements of the replacements. And the same is going to happen for the replacement, as you can see here in green coming in, okay? Also, it will bounce up and down over time, but it will get very stable over the late in the future, okay? Actually, in the future, and here is, let's say, 150 months in the future, the value of the cow and the value of the replacement at that point in time in 1 month would be the same. It gets stable, no matter how they started at the very beginning. So what we can do, and what we do actually, is we aggregate all these net returns from the day of today until the future from the cow, and also we do the same for the replacement, and we find out the cow value as a difference. And in this case, that difference happens to be, for example, $628. So that means it's a positive value, and that means if I keep this cow, which is in third lactation, 5 months in milk and 1 month pregnant, I will expect $628 more than if I replace this cow. It would happen that in some other times, the cow value will become negative. And if it is negative, it would mean that I'm better off replacing this cow. And that will bring, on those situations, better net return than keeping the cow, okay? So we can do critical economic decisions based on this, like keep or replace would be maybe the most important, but we will be able to, I have so many questions about what's the value of a pregnancy, what's the cost of a pregnancy loss, what's the cost of every single day open, and we all know that change depending on the cow, and it will change depending on the farm and on the economic factors. And here we have this tool that will give us a very nice assessment based on real data. So based on that, we can do crucial decisions like treat or not treat a cow, breed or not breed a cow, and if we are breeding, what's the quality we want to use for this specific cow? Sex semen, or maybe we want to do a embryo transfer, okay? Individual cow management is an important thing we could do based on this value, okay? And this value will depend very importantly on the expectancy of the milk productivity this cow, the current cow, would have in relationship with the other cows on the herd, and how much genetic gain we would expect with the replacement. So those are very important factors we need to consider in this cow value assessment. And here is the tool, very simple. On the left side and in yellow are all the inputs you need to define. And actually I'm gonna point you to the most important factors. And basically it's the status of the cow, the lactation, months after calving, and months in pregnancy, which should be readily available for every cow. But the next things here are very important to assess. Like for example, the expected milk that we would have from this cow for the rest of the lactation and next lactations. 100% means that this cow is the average cow. If it would be better than average, for example, we can assess to be 110%, 10% more than the average, or 80%, 20% below the average. That will make a difference on the cow value, and hopefully we can have, based on the records, some way to assess that for every single cow. The next thing that's going to apply to all the cows actually is the genetic gain that we can put here as a, for the replacement, that we can put here as a percentage point. For example, 1 percentage point would mean that the replacement will bring 1% more milk, 1% more milk than the current average cow on the herd. So those are the very important factors. But we will need other factors that are also important, but not as critical as these ones. And those are the herd production and reproduction variables, like for example, the culling rate or the rolling hair average or the 21-day pregnancy rate. Those would be important, but not as critical as the top ones. And the other things we need to define are the economic variables, like, for example, the replacement cost or the salvage value, which are important, but not as critical as the top ones, okay? Based on that, we will have a dollar value, like in this case, for example, $628 for this cow, this specific cow. And actually, we'll be able to see the breakdown of this cow value, how much we expect in milk sales, feed costs, calf value, and the like. All these will make up to the value of this cow in this point in time. One thing I want to just point you, we don't have the time to discuss this, is the last part of the assessment of this tool. It will give you additional information. I call this bonus information. This would require another presentation in itself, but I just want to make you aware that there is additional information that you can use based on this tool. Like, for example, you can assess here how much more or less I would expect if I decrease, for example, the culling rate. You will see that at the hair level for all the cows. This is not for the specific cow value. So here we are kind of concentrate only on the top part of this tool. Next thing, and very important, you had that previous part in which you are able to assess the cow value for one cow. But here you have the option to do exactly the same for all the cows on the herd. And that's what's going to make a lot of value, because you can choose a file, you can export your data from your own software, or you can do a list on a spreadsheet, and you can upload that information. And actually, the tool will give you a cow value for every single cow. For example, here we have 1595 cows, and each one of those will have a cow value, and you will have a spreadsheet with the ranking value of all those cows on your herd. Okay, so that's, I think, something very important you want to keep in mind in order to do a permanent, let's say, monthly analysis of the cow value of your animals, and based on that, do better decision making. The last thing I want to comment about this tool is that AgSource, many of you maybe are familiar with AgSource. It's a DHI records keeping, record processing company here in Wisconsin that works with about 4,500 herds. They actually took this tool as part of a new report, new product they are offering recently. It's called the Herd Selection Guide. And basically what they are doing is using farmers' information to do that ranked economic dairy value of all the cows. Okay, so that's something that's available for the farmers who work with them if they want to do that through them. But you could do exactly the same thing on your own using your data and entering the data to the tool directly. Okay, just want to give you a feeling what to expect on the cow value when a cow is open. For example, this is a second lactation and it's an average cow. It will decrease, it will become negative. For example, here at 9 or 10 months becomes negative if the cow remains open. So if it is open, the best decision maybe would be to cull. That's a good decision. Cull if it is negative here at 9 months and she's not pregnant. However, if she's pregnant, and you're gonna see these U-shaped curves here, very typical, that would be the value of the cows becoming pregnant. These are 3 months, 5 months, and 7 months, the month in which they became pregnant. And you can see at the very end of the pregnancy, the value of the cows will kind of reset and will be very similar regardless of where they became pregnant. The important thing here is that the value of the pregnant cow, as it would be expected, it is always much higher than the open cow. So getting the cows pregnant, of course, will add to their value. The other thing I want to point here very quickly in the interest of time is the fact and the impact that we have depending on the productivity of the cows. That will make a huge difference, as I was saying before. Here we have a non-pregnant cow in second lactation, and here we have 3 scenarios. Base scenario is average cow, okay, and that's the curve we saw before. It becomes negative here in between 8 and 9 months, okay. If we have 20% more milk from this cow, we expect 20% more milk. You look how much more value we will have on this cow, and actually this cow should be bred longer time. We should give more services and more opportunities of getting pregnant for this 20% above average cow. What happens if it is 20% below average? Look this red curve here. And you can see that it becomes negative even at the second month after calving. So based on this data, I should even breed this cow. I should replace right very quickly after calving with that low expectancy of productivity in next lactations. How about for pregnant cows? You can see again here a base cow 20% above average and 20% below average. And you can see this curve here is the average cow, and for different lactations 1 through 8. And you can see how much more you would expect if it is 20% above average. But the important and interesting point I want to make in this figure is the fact that even if this cow is pregnant, 2 months pregnant and 8 months in lactation, regardless of the lactation, her value is going to be negative. So according to this data, what it's telling me is even though this cow is 2 months pregnant, I should replace her because the replacement is going to give me more value than this pregnant cow. And that's important to do and important to decide with a systematic way. Last point about the cow value is the fact and the impact of the genetic gain. I mentioned that if we have a higher expectancy on our replacements, we will decrease the current cow value on the herd. And actually that, according to Wisconsin data, and this is published actually in July 2012 in the Journal of Dairy Science, we would have $211 lower value for every 1 percentage point of increase in genetic gain with the replacement. So now it's time for our quick poll, and I'm gonna just read for you the question: what do you think is the most important use you would give to this economic value of a dairy cow tool?
Okay, we're off and running, and
more quick
that's our
poll
last
here.
chance to vote.
And after this, we'll be wrapping up, and we do have a few questions that have been submitted here, Victor, so we'll be getting back to those here shortly after we tabulate this voting and have you make some closing comments. It's been very interesting.
Very good. We're getting up to 50% here, and we'll give it another 10 seconds and see if we
shooting right
get,
up there. 60.
I got my favorite one picked out. Dave, Steve, you got yours?
Yeah, I had it right the last time, so I think I just quit on that one.
Oh.
I better quit while I was ahead.
Okay, let's lock her in, and let's share it
right,
with
let's
Victor.
see what
Victor,
they
you comment?
say. Survey says, as they say.
Great. As I would expect, almost 60%, 59% of the people replacement decisions. I would agree completely with that. That's an important. But also I would agree with the second best option there. They calculate the metrics for decision making. I think that's critical and probably something I would like to emphasize and to promote more the use of this tool, because it is obvious to think in the replacement, but you can see there would be many other potential uses as the metrics, as the reproduction. I think that's very important as well. I haven't commented about health, but I would think also I would agree I would not agree as much with that low 2% of health, because I think this would have lots of applications also for health-related treatment decisions, for example, depending on the value of the cow, how much I should invest on a cow depending on their value. Okay, great. Just to finish here, I will put the acknowledgement to doing this work, and I would like to leave you with a nice picture of Wisconsin with several dairy farms in the background, and just thank you for your kind attention, and be open for any question, comments. I would be more than glad to entertain those.
Very good.
Let's go to the next PowerPoint, Steve, and you may want to wrap up here.
I will. Well, first of all, thank you, Victor, for a very interesting, stimulating presentation. You've made me anxious to go to your website and to look at all of the tools that are available there, and I'm sure many of our listeners will be looking forward to doing that as well. We also want to thank Lallemand Animal Nutrition for their support of the webinar today, and also, of course, Mike Hutchins at the University of Illinois and Jim Baltz, his sidekick, for their support today as well. Just calling your attention to our next webinar March 11th, ABCs of Alfalfa Harvest by the colorful Eb Thomas of W.H. Minor Institute back there in up North Country in New York. And we're looking forward to that presentation as well. Just a reminder to those of you listening that you'll be receiving a survey here in the next few days in which you can respond to information to your impression of the webinar today and make some suggestions for us if you see the need for it, and help us plan our webinar presentations in the future. And of course, as always, all of the webinars that we've presented are available. They're archived, and go to hoards.com and click on the webinar link. And we've had nearly 18,000 individual visits to our past webinars so far. So great response there. Mike, we do have a few questions that have been submitted for Victor. I'll let you introduce those.
Okay, Victor, fast answers. First of all, what about metric? Does FeedVal handle metrics? In other words, kilograms and stuff like that?
That is in our list of to do, and we will be doing that in the near future. We don't have it at this point worked out, but that should be a nice and not too complicated addition to the tool, and I think it makes sense to do in metrics as well. Thanks.
Okay, next question. Anything on cost of keeping too many replacement heifers using your software program?
I would need a little more elaboration on anything on the cost of keeping too many replacement.
Yeah, I think their question is, like if does your program say how many replacements they should keep based on decisions made if they downloaded their herd? How many cows would have to be replaced? Probably that just depends on the answer, I suppose, huh?
Yes, well, but that's a good point. I just wanted to make sure I'm responding to what the person was trying to ask. Well, but what I would suggest is we do have at least 2 or 3 nice tools as well about the structure of the herd and the structure of the replacement. So it can give you a good idea how many replacements you would like to keep and what would be the cost. Those also have the component of the cost and benefit of keeping more or less replacements. And based on that, the connection that needs to be done at this point, it would need to be done by running 2 different tools. One would be the replacement and the other would be the replacement one. At some point also we're planning on connecting those 2, and we will have a good idea what's the balance between what we are producing as replacements and what we need, the demand and offer of the number of replacements, and make an economic and optimal decision on keeping just the right number of replacements. If you allow me very quickly, I would just comment that the next tool we are working on is on the genomics, and that also I think has relationship with it, because it will give a good option to producers to see the possibility of doing a test on genomics and try to only raise those more valuable animals.
Victor, could you advance your PowerPoints one more click, please?
Sure.
I think there's one more. There we go. There's one more slide, and we're glad to have that. Now, Mike, back to you.
Yep, very good. I should have picked up on that earlier, Steve. Sorry about that. Pretty straightforward, I think. No more FeedVal standalone situations if you don't have the internet. In other words, your program, you don't see it being available to be downloaded like FeedVal's 1s, 2, 3, and 4. Is that correct?
Yes, that has been a change, and we have received a request more than once on doing a standalone application. We are considering it. At this point, one of the reasons we keep as an online tool is because we are still doing some using the nice feedback of the users. We are doing here and there some improvements, and the only way we have and the best way to make sure the users have the latest tool is to keep those online. But yeah, we will consider to do. At this point, there is no standalone FeedVal. It is only the web-based.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, Victor, if I'm correct, is the service you're giving the updated feed price every month. We'd lose that. The user would not
Yes,
have that, and they'd have to find all those prices, and that's a huge job.
right. That's a good point, Mike. Thanks.
Here's another question. Can you use this to evaluate relative values of different corn silages based on its nutrient value and moisture value?
Yes, correct. That's a correct sentence. I didn't do the analysis myself. A group of people from UW Extension did it, but I'm very familiar how they did it. And actually, the table I was pointing you on that publication includes different values at different levels of humidity of the corn silage.
Okay. One more last question here, and that is if we choose a feed like soybean as a reference feed, does FeedVal 2012 also evaluate soybean meal as a good buy? For example, here in the Pacific Northwest, we rely on canola as a staple protein source. So if soy is a reference feed, would we learn if we should use canola versus soy?
Yes, the short and quick answer would be yes. You would learn that. You would have the final decision on using one or both as referee feeds. Historically, soybean and soybean meal have been used because we do have a market price well defined, but that's not that doesn't need to be followed every time. You could use canola as well as a referee feed and also to investigate its true value.
But Victor, I mean, if you have the canola price in there, there really is no reference feed. I mean, they work against all the other feeds, don't they? There is no reference feed, is there? If you check the box, say canola and cottonseed and soy, they all contribute to figuring the value of protein.
Correct. My understanding, well, maybe I didn't understand well, but I mean, use the soybean as a referee feed for the protein part as well. And then you could insert the cottonseed as well or not, depending if you want to use as a referee feed as well or not.
I think the question is coming because from FeedVal's 1, 2, 3, and 4, you had to use soybean meal. You know, and that's the beauty of your program. Actually, any protein supplement will play into the solution. Whereas in the old system, you had to pick shell corn, and you couldn't use barley, and you couldn't use canola if you're in Canada.
Right. Yeah. Good point. I mean, at the end, maybe the answer would be, you would decide the best way you want to work with it, and you can use any single feed as referee feed.
So the Pacific Northwest, if they didn't want to use soybean meal, they just wouldn't put it in, or they would uncheck that box, and therefore it would no longer be used in the reference area.
Exactly. You just uncheck all the feeds, and then you select if you think the canola would make a better job as a referee feed on the Pacific North. You just pick that one as a referee feed for the protein part.
Well, Victor, you have done yeoman's job at this point. I think we've answered all the questions
Absolutely.
that came in.
Right.
And Steve, we'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And again, thank you very much, Victor, for a wonderful presentation, very stimulating. And boy, it shows a lot of work on the part of you and your team to bring all this stuff together. And it's a great service to the industry. And we sure appreciate it. It was well presented, and we also thank Lallemand Animal Nutrition for their support of today's webinar. A month from now, roughly, March 11th, ABCs of Alfalfa Harvest, Ed Thomas from the Minor Institute. That's going to be sponsored by WL Alfalfas, and we're looking forward to that, and looking ahead a little bit more into April 8th. Mike Hutchins will be the presenter with us again. We're going to be talking about the money, putting values on feed, especially from the forage standpoint. Kemen's going to be sponsoring that. So our thanks again to you, Victor, and to Mike, and to Jim, and to all of you who are still with us. We appreciate your participation and look forward to having you join us on future webinars and checking out our archives online if you have missed some in the past. That's all for now.
Thank you very much.